Mary Van Geffen is an international parenting coach for moms of spicy ones, as well as a spicy one herself. Mary helps parents practice the spiritual discipline of staying calm, kind, and firm with their strong willed kids, especially when they don't deserve it. She combines her training as a simplicity parenting counselor and professional coactive coach with hard earned personal experience raising her own spirited child, as well as her mild mannered child. I have interviewed Mary before about movement as regulation for spicy kids. Check out that episode 157 to hear all about that. Today, I wanted to have Mary on to talk about how parents of spicy ones can better regulate themselves with movement. She has a brand new book, Parenting a Spicy One, a compassionate guide to raising a deep feeling and wonderfully strong willed kid. She asked me to write a blurb for the book, and here's what I wrote. I wept, laughed, and read aloud most of this book to my husband. Somebody gets it. Somebody gets us. Somebody gets our kid. We are not alone. Mary Van Geffen, welcome to Move Your DNA.
Oh, it's so good to be back. And that when you agreed to read the book and then actually react to it, and then you wrote that you brought your husband in it, and oh, it meant so much to me. So I'm so appreciative that you would take the time because this book is for 2 to 10-year-olds. It definitely, I mean, you can speak as a mom of teens and tweens, but it just meant a lot to me. So thank you.
Well, people ask me to blurb often, and I love books. I love reading. Blurbing's hard. It's hard to write something pithy, snappy that really sums it up. But what I have found I like to do most is just write down whatever I found myself saying out loud. So I was writing the blurb, but I was reading the book. I'd shout it out, and being a spicy one myself, kept interrupting my husband with whatever he was doing to make sure that So I was like, okay, wait, listen to this. Just really excited about the book. I wish the book had existed earlier, and also I'm really glad that it exists now.
Hmm.
Thanks for writing it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I believe you are a spicy one because you've been saying things that don't fit the general narrative of you don't fit into a box. And I mean, the people that change the world, I mean, you're changing the world. And I can imagine you were really tough to parent, especially when a parent hasn't had the support to know, like, no, 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 you're raising an incredible, exceptional adult, which means they're going to be a really difficult person to be in charge of.
In my first big book, Move Your DNA, in the acknowledgments, I thanked a bunch of people, and I one of the people I thanked was my mother because her mantra was, "You're the captain of your own ship." But she really didn't like when I embodied that sentiment. And I wrote something like, who really told me I could do whatever I wanted to do. Like, "You can be anything you wanna be. You can do anything you wanna do. You're the captain of your own ship," even when that made it really hard for her. And it was hard for her, and she did not have the tools. But I also feel that she was a nice, and she still is, she's still here with us, um, because she herself was a spicy one, really wanted me to know that, you can do anything you want, but it's painful. Painful when we can talk more about this. But yeah, it doesn't have to be about me, but anyway, I'm glad this book exists. I'm glad you exist. But for everyone new to this concept of spiciness, let's start with what is a spicy one?
A spicy one is what good old James Dobson used to call a strong willed child. But it's also just somebody who has a temperament that is intense and persistent and a deep feeler who kind of goes from 0 to 10, who looks at the world a little bit differently, might have some impulse control, who's moving constantly. A spicy child, a spicy one is somebody who feels like they are equal with adults. They don't necessarily see the hierarchy and they will negotiate right up until the point that they realize they don't have, any control over situation, and then they melt down like somebody 5 years younger than they should be,
Mhm.
and so they're just this vibrant, fabulous, really, hard and intractable child, and sometimes they can be a real Eeyore and a curmudgeon and point out everything that's not good. They can destroy the family trip just with their vibe, and, they can make a parent feel like, "I must be doing something wrong," because this is only about 25% of kids. Most kids are very oriented to whatever the adult wants, they want for a long time. Then you hit adolescence, and now everybody's got a spicy one. But the I work with and the book I wrote is for people who's like, you can tell at 1 years of age, just the way they hold themselves and, "No, I want it." I mean, I guess every two-year-old is a bit of a spicy one, but it continues on, and sometimes when they get upset, they get violent and aggressive, and it's not precalculated, but it is, destructive.
So, I wanna talk about regulation. How do you define regulation? Because 'Cause we're gonna be talking about using movement as regulation, but let's start with what regulation is.
Ooh, that's good. I wish I woulda looked it up because it's in my book. I have a
Mhm.
nice little, definition, I can't remember, but I will tell you, co-regulation is that art of finding your own calm and centeredness and slowing down your own nervous system while also supporting a child who's doing the same thing. So, regulating doesn't mean always being calm, but it means having the skills to, have that involuntary flare up that's just your nervous system trying to keep you safe and being able to bring yourself back to a more calm place. And there is so much we can do in our bodies that, and a lot of it does involve movement, which is why it's such a cool thing to be talking to you. Some of it is just self-talk. And did I tell the story when we were together about getting my vitals taken for insurance?
No, tell us
Okay,
that.
so I will never forget, this is probably 5 years ago, we were gonna find out for life insurance, and they were gonna come take all of our vitals, and if there's anything wrong with you, it's gonna cost a lot more money to, get this life insurance. So my husband pulls up in the driveway, and I'm out on the grass, my feet in the soil, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm making sure that I've got good vitals when they come." And he said, "Oh, sweetheart, there's nothing you can do in the next 30 minutes that's going to change your vitals." And I said, "Really, sir?" So the lady comes, she takes my blood pressure, and it was 60 was the high, and it was really good, whatever. And I said, "Can that count for the life insurance?" She said, "Sure." And I said, "Great, because I want to see how much I can change my vitals." And I said, "So starts," and I just started bearing down in my body, like like in every place, squeezing and clenching and saying to myself, "No one likes you. You're nothing. You don't matter." And that little dial just spun all the way up to 90. And she was surprised and he was surprised, and we all have that power, and that really plays into parenting. The things that we're telling ourselves and the way we're treating our own body very much impact the way we speak to our child and treat them. So I'm just a big proponent of taking responsibility for this beautiful instrument of parenting, which is the body.
So why do I was gonna ask you, like, why do spicy ones need a regulated parent? I'm assuming all everyone could benefit from a regulated parent. What is the benefit of stepping into a parenting situation being regulated?
I'm so glad you're asking because I feel like there's a lot of assumption. It's just we hear this phrase, regulate, co-regulate. But there's a few reasons. One is that your emotions are so contagious. We've got all these mirror neurons where we're built to be in community. And if you're really upset and I'm witnessing that, I begin to get upset. And so the way that you lead a small child, who, by the way, has even more mirror neurons than you, they haven't been, um, what's that word, like pruned away yet.
Whittled down.
Yeah. The way to lead them is to manage your own calm to be calm so that their brain can see you being calm and it helps them get calm. And obviously, we all make better decisions when we're calm. When you're activated, they stay activated. And you really want to communicate to a child who is melting down, who's losing it, that they're safe. And you can't do it through words because that part of their brain is shut down. So you do it by managing your own calm. And then that mammalian part of them can sense that you're not a threat, that you're safe. So that's one reason, just the contagiousness of emotions. So you got to be, as the leader of the family, you got to be responsible for your own emotions. But the second is that the more connected we are to a child, the more, especially a strong willed child, the more that we can have influence on the relationship. It's sort of like we earn the credits for being able to influence somebody when we create connection. And connection comes through that calm. And every time you manage a big old meltdown and you handle it calmly, you're building like another trust knot in that relationship. And that connected parenting, there's so much research that it delivers much better results in terms of well-being and academic um, uh, success, and rather than like the compliance focused parenting. And so when we're calm, we can connect better, and, we have better communication skills, all that. The third reason is, like, you become the safest person in the room, and that, to me, is the goal. Be the safest person in the room, manage how you are going to be regardless of how your child's going to be, because they learn best when when they are calm, and they can't get to calm if you're not calm. And you can't teach if your brain is hijacked and you're in
Mhm.
this the amygdala just speaks in verbs like hit, run, yell. It doesn't have any finesse or charisma or compassion. And so you have to get to calm to allow that front of your brain to come back on so you can nurture the relationship and teach that lesson you want. And the good news is your window of tolerance, your ability to handle like stimulation and your child's disrespect, we can grow that window by practicing the skills of self regulation. We get better and better. I was a piece of work when I started out parenting. I was reactionary and I had this inner monster that just loved to be triggered. And now you're going to get it. And it was only through this work of practicing, getting back to calm. It's just a skill. It's just like yoga. It's just like lifting weights. It's slowly building the capacity to go to a positive response rather than a negative response. And those are the reasons that you want to get to calm when you're parenting a spicy one.
I like the idea, a muscle, the calm muscle, flexing it throughout the day.
Yes.
Um,
And it can get fatigued as well.
well, that's fair, right? There's a capacity we all have, for training. Um, what are some ways we'll go into movement next, but what are just a handful of ways that someone could be working on ways to regulate? And I know that there's chapters of this in the book. I want folks to go read that book, especially if you have a spicy one. But if you just wanted to lay out you thank you for showing the amazing cover, which is red and orange and yellow, right?
All the fiery, spicy colors.
All
Yeah.
the amazing colors. Um, what are some of the ways? You had mentioned already self-talk.
Yeah. So I look at, because it wasn't common sense to me how to get calm, and my mother wasn't calm, and um, my kid wasn't calm. I had to break it down into like a system that is in some ways oversimplified because we are not computers, right? But to me, there are four parts to getting calm. Movement, which you're the leader on that. We'll talk about that last. But the other three are breathing, how you breathe. Yeah,
Mhm.
nice. How you sense, what you sense, within your body and outside of your body is a part of getting calm, and then the third thing is the self-talk, and the fourth is movement. So, breathing, sensing, thinking, and movement, and I'll just briefly talk about th those first 3. Breathing, um, people think, "Oh, take a breath, take a breath." That's actually a startle response. We want to
Mhm.
exhale for as long as we can to notify our body that we're safe. And so the whole job here is to expand the conscious pause between the awful thing your kid does and the response you're going to have. We're just trying to buy time for the
Mhm.
body. So one way to do that is to be like, I'm going to take breath in through the nose and I'm gonna slowly, like I'm sipping a straw, exhale it through the mouth, and maybe I'll do a count. Maybe it'll be 4 in and it'll be 8 out. Oh, I couldn't get to 8, I can only get to 7. Now, meanwhile, your kid just said, "What are we eating for dinner?" Right? And I want you to be a sloth when it comes to retraining your body to get to calm is we're going to take care of you and your instrument. And so customer service levels are going to decline and that's okay. So you might focus on your breathing. You might focus on your sensing. And what that means is checking what's happening inside your body. Where are you clenching? I used to clench when I was making, like, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for my kid at a play date, and I'd notice that everything was tight, and it's like, "What's going on here? I'm not in battle. I'm not under fire." And when I would release my belly and let it soften and take my hands and unclench them, or when my daughter was, having a meltdown and I would look at her with hard eyes, I
Mhm.
began to take a moment and soften. I would sense everything softening and melting. And I might put my hands where there was a feeling. This is another part of sensing. Like, where is the anger? Can I locate it? Can I notice the physicality of it? Can I can I notice that the sensing and the breathing, they're not separate, right? Can I notice my breathing? Can I notice my heart rate? So that's sensing. You can also some people like to do like, okay, I'm going to notice um 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch. That doesn't work for me. I'm too triggered. It's that's too cerebral, but that does work for somebody. Um I like to also do a hand meditation. When I'm really upset, I start to slowly run the fingers of my left hand over the palms and
Mm.
fingers of the right hand. But the trick is you have to bring your full brain to it, where all you're doing is noticing like you're flying over the Sahara, this the ridges and wrinkles of your hands. And that brings me out of this reactionary. So that's breathing, sensing. And then the thinking is what are you telling yourself when you begin to go into rage mode? And if it's I'm failing, one great thing to do is to externalize that. Wow, there's a part of me that thinks I'm failing. In my book, I call it the inner mean girl. The inner mean girl thinks I'm failing. Okay, duly noted. Very different than me saying I'm failing. There are thoughts we can have that disrupt and upset our body. So, making the mean thought separate or choosing a positive thought like, "This is not an emergency." What a beautiful thought that is to live in versus, "I've gotta get this right. This is really high stakes." And this is not even what you're saying to your child, it's just what's happening inside. I like to think of it as like a ticker tape that's running across your forehead. What is the thought? Is it, "Well, we're all learning together," or is it, "I should be ashamed of myself," right? The thought is gonna change the things happening within your body. Maybe you can say, "This too shall pass," or, "All behavior is communication. My child's not doing this to me. They're doing it for me." I can let them feel this without fixing it. Just being really aware of what thought. And some new students of mine, we literally write out one statement that they are going to practice saying when they feel themselves becoming enraged. So those are the 3 parts. Moving is absolutely vital because we want to complete the stress response cycle. And I think I read this in Burnout. Have you read that book? It's a great book by 2 women. Um, And it's this idea that it's not the stressful thing, like your child screaming at you or getting fired from work. That's not what does damage on your body and what causes like stress related diseases. It's when you don't complete the stress cycle. And the stress cycle starts with this upsetting thing and then your body gears into action. Hormones are getting released, cortisol, everything's happening and we just sit there and we let that all surge in our body and we don't move to complete the cycle. If a saber-toothed tiger came out, we ran and we could hardly breathe when we got to the end, and we were fine because our body had felt that it had handled the threat. But in our modern society, we're getting this activation, and then we're not doing the physicality to move that out and let our body know that we used all those chemicals. The
Chemicals are to move us. The reason that they're dropping is to create some sort of physical response, which beautifully metabolizes them. But because so much of our stress is emails and relationships and societal things, not actual physical threats in the moment, it's interesting it becomes a physical threat later on when you have the accumulation.
Yes, and it makes total sense why parents yell, because
Mhm.
yelling is a way to complete the stress cycle.
Well, it's physical.
Yes.
It's a movement, so pick a different movement.
And I wonder if you have some movement ideas for a parent. I have a few, but I always like to add to my toolkit.
Well, I think that I think of movement and regulation of myself as a spicy parent of 1 or 2 spicy kids. Where are these mild children I've heard about? I don't know. Um, and I like to think of regulation in 2 different ways. One of the ways is in the moment, so, like, there's a situation right in front of you that's causing all this internal chaos, and I'm trying to get my internal chaos to fly in formation so it's less disruptive to me before I, um, finish the interaction. And then there's a regulation that comes way before that, because that's how I like to use movement. So my ideas around movement have a lot to do with before I get in this situation. I don't wanna show up to a pillow fight with a gun, because it's all really pillow fights ultimately with my kids, and I see that, and I am like, "Oh, well, this is a real strong reaction for something really small," and I have found that I can diffuse myself to carry around a pillow almost all of the time with movement way ahead of time, rather than using it as a tool in the actual moment. Now, there are ways to use movement as a tool in the movement, in the moment, but I have found that my best tool of movement is, brought out regularly surrounding all those moments. So those moments become even less, and that's one of the main reasons. It's why it's my desire to show up. It's a value of mine to show up as a compassionate person, as a, humorous, laughter-rich person, but I can only do that if I'm well moved. I do not have the access to those parts of me when my need for movement has not been met.
Mm.
So that's the way the tool shakes out for me. And it's interesting because, in menopause with teenagers is a whole different set of internal messaging for me than when I had little kids and was 10 years younger. I've just found that this I still like, I'm glad I developed the muscle for calm when the stakes weren't as high. I don't know, the feelings weren't as high, but now they're much bigger, and so I've had to make my movement even more vigorous, and then it almost disables the overreacting part of my brain.
This makes so much sense to me because when someone says, "How do I stop the meltdowns?" I love to say, well, there's 3 time periods where you can stop them. During, don't worry about it, you can't because the
Mhm.
train has left the thing. After, well, now there's, like, all this shame and you don't really let's just repair, let's not make somebody it's really before that you can do your most work to maybe head off a big meltdown, but some kids just need to melt down a couple times a day, and that's part of their growth process. But I love that you saying that movement really Yeah, becomes before, and when you're really angry, there are some amazing movements to move that out of your body.
Absolutely. It's both. I think that there's a lot of focus on in the moment and to be like, "This is a much pan out a little bit," because, a lot of our emotions are often signals of under movement to begin with, and so if we can take that
Say more,
well,
please.
it's like, I write about it as, movement hunger signals, and you can there's an essay on this on Substack, I'll link to it in, the show notes. I When I am feeling really pissy and really irritated, and it's at kind of everyone in the room, I have to be like, "Oh, right, this is." I have learned, I can go take a walk and those pissy feelings go down. The way my body communicates to me that I am undermoved is through general irritation with everything.
Mm,
This is a feeling that I get. It's not my hips are hurting. It's the feeling that I have around not moving my body adequately don't come through the channels of the body parts that you would think are involved in movement. Like, we're so in the box when we think about, like, movement is for your legs, movement is for your bones, movement is for your muscles, movement is for your shoulders, and your mind is something completely different. Your brain has nothing to do with movement and doesn't get agitated when you don't move. When all of these parts really thrive on regular inputs of movement. So in the same way we would teach a kid, "Oh, you're angry right now. This is hanger." We can bring down your anger because really it's a sign of you didn't eat enough or you didn't eat the right thing. You didn't have enough protein or you had too much sugar. You're sort of wailing around right now. You feel really sad. Well, I noticed you had a big sugar spike right now, and this feeling for you has a lot to do with just dietary nutrition.
mm. It
Basic.
reminds me a lot of how highly sensitive people who process at a deeper level all the stuff coming in their 5 senses, the number one thing they need is sleep. Like, sleep will make the biggest difference, as probably movement, and those seem kinda correlated, that there are these basics that you need to operate the best you can.
Well, and I mean, just to stay on the spicy theme, we we would there would be this meltdown of one of the kids in our house, and it was like the same type of meltdown, and we're just going, "Well, I don't know what's going on here." And then we slowly, through tracking patterns and observation, like, "Oh, this is the I have to poop meltdown. This is my colon," and it was like clockwork. "Oh, you have to poop. That's all it is." And then to teach them that this feeling that you're having is your bowels. It's coming through your mind as all these other things and all these other reasons, but at the core, it's just your bowels. So when you feel this way and it was like really specific things that were coming out of the mouth about how the situation was, because there was difficulty interpreting a signal. And I watched my stomach, the difference when kids are very little, they don't know what nausea is, perhaps. Hunger creates nausea, flu creates nausea, driving can create nausea, right? These are this is one signal coming from the body, but there's 3 different situations here. Some of them can be remedied by having a snack. Some of them can be remedied by changing what you're doing with your eyes while you're driving, and one of them can't be remedied at all until you throw up. But the communication system of the body is so rudimentary, it takes a while to interpret the signals correctly, and we are often dealing with sedentary children, sedentary parents with really big emotions. And so one arm of my work is to say, let's start checking in with some of these emotions that we're showing up um, to these pillow fights with that aren't just underslept, underfed, undermoved. Take care of some of the basics here. And then when you get that habit situated, you're left with they're all real emotions, but you're left with emotions that aren't really related necessarily to. Biological imperatives. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, there's signals to nourish yourself.
You know what we need to do? We need to rewrite halt. You know, halt, where you say, hold on a second. Is my kid hungry, angry, tired, or lonely? Or maybe it's
Mm,
lonely or tired. We need to add in there undermoved. I don't know what the word is for undermoved. Sedentary, halts.
yeah, halts. I mean, that's a big thing, and I have big teenager kids now and with really big emotions already just amped up because 'cause got more hormones going on, but their need for movement is also bigger right now, and so there's a discrepancy between.
Oh, I can't tell you with my when my spicy one was a teenager, when things just didn't feel right and there was this disconnect and every conversation felt yucky, there was nothing like saying, "Hey, will you take a walk with me?"
Mhm,
And she'd be like, okay." And what was really important is there was no teaching that was gonna happen. There was no hard talk that was gonna happen. It was literally just, "Will you move through space with me?" And we would come back, and you could almost feel the pink kind of energy, love that had been from that movement, and now you're explaining why.
yeah, it's just, it helps organize things a little bit, just takes that, yearning the body has for something to be different, i.e., you're sitting still off the table, and then you can see what's sitting underneath it. Okay, so let's go back to in the moment movement suggestions. What do you got? I'll see what you got and see if I have anything to add.
Okay, we'll put our guns on the table. Um, I mean, emotion requires some kind of motion of the body if you want to feel it and move it through. I'm not trying to suppress emotion, I'm not trying to get rid of it, but, uh, it can a meltdown can linger and linger and then reamp up when we don't have things that we like to do, and I'm talking more about the adult in the situation.
Mhm,
So, one thing that, is really powerful for me is slap, shake, tap, rub, roll, and it's sort of creating friction where you're almost disorienting. Right now, I'm crossed my arms and I'm just tapping on all the way down my arms, and I'm tapping on my head, and I'm tapping on my legs, and it's I don't know why it works. Maybe you can explain that, but so any tapping, shaking, we find that mammals that have been attacked, you know, if a rabbit gets attacked by a lion and somehow makes it doesn't get eaten, when the lion leaves, do rabbits and lions live in the same terrain? I don't know. I can't say the word wolf, and so I try to avoid it.
mhm.
But let's
So
say
you
the
brought in a lion, you brought in a pinch hitter, you're like, "So the lion."
the tiger. Anyway, when a predator attacks prey and the prey survives, what we find in nature is that it starts shaking
Mhm,
uncontrollably, shaking, shaking, and then it stands up and it walks away. And animals aren't traumatized, right? They kind of move on. And so shaking does something for us. So whether it's like having your moving back and forth and letting your hands just slam the back and the front of your body over and over again, or just shaking everything, um, slapping and then rolling. There's something about getting on the ground. And when you're not sure what to do with your kid, always go to the ground. Just go to the ground, either get in the child's pose, that is totally appropriate. You can moan in the child's pose and get your whole you can kind of feel like you're in your own little sound cavern and reset that way. And because I think a lot of times what's so stressful about parenting is how out of control we feel. We can't stop their suffering. We can't get them to be quiet, all of our senses. And so finding these little ways to show up for yourself are really important. So rubbing, tapping, slapping, shaking, all that stuff is um, easily accessible to us. You give me one, I'll give you another one after that.
well, for us, we just I do all sorts of quirky things, and we have rings, like gymnast rings,
Oh,
hanging in our living room.
kind of like what you use in Pilates that where you put them between your knees or
No,
just
like gymnast rings, the rings that hang from long straps that you can grab and you can push yourself up into the
this
T
isn't
position.
feeling super relatable, but okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it out.
Well, this is for our audience who all have created hanging stations or like that's regular this is regular for us
Oh,
to
I'm so
actually mulch
jealous.
time.
Okay.
Well, you can do it. You don't
No,
even have
because
to
I
be
had
jealous.
someone come in and say in my last house, This cannot bear any weight. So you can do it, but you need somebody who will come in and show you where the weight bearing beams are."
Absolutely. You need to have it done correctly. But we put these into our living room because just, we're a talking, chatting, emotional family. We're a dynamic family, but we just started, when we're having difficult conversations, someone's swinging on the rings. Me, the kids, you keep your feet like we're doing these big arches and you can create almost a uh, ice skaters. I don't know what the term is. When you start going, you angular accelerate, and you just start spinning really quickly.
Yes.
You can get yourself doing that with one foot on the ground and one hand on the rings. So we've built into our home spaces for bigger movements, big diffusing movements for big emotions in the middle of a conversation. Like we don't have to have, if someone's going to come at me for what they need or whatever, I go to the rings. I'm on the rings. I'm like, bring it. Let's go. What are we talking about? And then I can sort of be moving my body through it, and then I step off, and then they're on it. And so just really weaving movement into the culture in that way, I think is really helpful.
Oh, that's beautiful, and what I also hear in that is you're not trying to control somebody else's body while having tough conversations, because
Yes, right.
a lot of moms of teenagers are like, "Can you uncross your arms?" Maybe that's how they're self-soothing themselves, and you're not forcing, "No, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna stare at each other across a table," which can feel like a confrontation that it didn't need to be. So I love that you're letting everybody move their body in the way that they need to. I know another family that does something similar where they have a whole weight training scenario in the garage with things that can be hung on, and that's where they have some of their, big conversations. "Let's take it to the mat," they say. That's
And
amazing.
another one that's, I would say, small is massage. So you have a nice diagram section sidebar in your book about
The astronaut massage?
yeah, yeah, and I think for little kids, um, it's easier to touch little kids. Like a side note, I had read um, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Do you remember that book?
Yes, yes.
When I was little, I mean, I was a teenager, and I don't know, there was like 50 versions of that book. Chicken Soup for the Teenage Souls, Chicken Soup for the Single Mom Soul or whatever. I don't remember, I read all of them. If was at a doctor's office or someplace that had a book, I would read it, and so those
That's
books
so
were often
sweet. I
out.
love knowing that about you,
I
Katie.
I will pick up this book and read these essays, and one of them was a single mother who had started giving her children facials on Friday night as just a way to connect with them and touch them. And then she had said, and this tradition had lasted all the way through their teens because she had established it so early. And it allowed her to touch them and them to receive touch in this very utility way. We're going to do a facial, um, and I was probably 12 or 13 when I read that, and I'm like, "I'm gonna do that." And I did.
Oh,
I did do it.
yeah,
And
I'm a little teary about that. I know you don't wanna be emotional with me, but, like, just that you were building the vision of the family you wanted, even though maybe you didn't come from that. It's just
yeah,
the human soul and its ability to, like, t
reach for the
vi
things and
yes, and envision and
mhm.
create is just amazing.
So we just have a real strong I'll use the word spa, but I don't a spa culture in our house. Taking care of our body and, like, just understanding our body is obviously, like, a mission statement in our home. And so it was nice because it created skincare, but it also just created this idea of like we touch each other in these ways to help each other out. And it feels good. So this is all to say because we had just had this long history of it. When things are tense, even with the kids that are bigger than me, heavier than me, stronger than me, they're uh they're rage in moments when things aren't going their way, when they're just really feeling a loss of autonomy. We've got these habits where I'll be like, "I'm gonna sit down. If you wanna do you want me to work on your feet while we do this?" Just something like that, and it's instantly diffused for both of us. We're like, "Here's 2 caring people who touch each other and
Yeah,
help
this
each
can't be
other."
my enemy
It's not y
if they're doing my
no.
feet. Yeah, that's
And plus it's very
beautiful.
humbling. It's very humbling to take someone's feet.
Mhm. Like Jesus.
Yeah, you just sit at someone's feet, and all the cultures, really see ankles and feet as spiritual, and it's also like, "Give me your dirty feet. Give me your stinky,
Yeah,
dirty."
and I still love you. Yeah.
And I'll even pick them up and like, "Ugh, smell," and I stay there and do it anyway. So what is this saying? I love you no matter what, and this has been big for us, but I don't know how that would work for someone else who
Well, wait,
hadn't d
let me
Yeah,
add
yeah.
to that. When my kids were starting kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, and they were having that after school restraint collapse where they've been keeping it together all day, following the little boxes, not having much movement, and then they come home and they just lose it. I started having, like, "Well, when you get here, you always have a foot spa." And they would walk in, and I have this big old restaurant gray tub that I would put essential oils in, grab some rosemary that grows here, kinda wild, and have something sensory for the smell and the feet and the bubbles, and they would just sit on the front porch before they even came in the house, and it just was like this, and there and I wish now you sharing that, I wish I would done even more touch with that. Something that we have started in my family is scalp massages, and I have this little Ziploc not Ziploc, like a little zipper bag where I have 3 different combs and some chopsticks, and we're basically just slowly running what happens when you go to the hairdresser, the best part, and they wash your hair. That's what we're doing, but without the water or the soap. Just slow little circles, and it helps people fall asleep, and, and it also helps if you have a kid who's not super into hugs and that kinda touch. To your point, when you make it like, "Oh, well, this is a scalp massage. This is different.
Mhm.
This is, to your point, utilitarian. This has a purpose, but it's still this beautiful time of connection."
Yeah, I it's just that. It helps you in some other way. It's not about it's I feel like it's an emotion-free zone. It's not necessarily emotionless, but to them, it's like, "I'm not coming into your space. I'm not asking for consolation." For me, I'm not trying to give consolation to you. That's not the intent. It's almost the byproduct, and that really opens a lot of doors, I
So what
find
I hear
when
you saying is it reduces vulnerability.
that's yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
At least at first.
Mhm. It's pretty cool.
Uh, okay, so anything for asked, some of my friends, and, like, when you've got a big teenager in your face, bigger than you know, and you are menopausal, and you're right back there. Any movement suggestions in that moment that are quickly accessible?
You're not gonna like this one, but you can walk away. Walking away is a powerful movement when you're
Mm,
feeling that you're getting on the roller coaster with them and you're taking it up and you're ready to go just right where they are. It's totally okay to move away from someone you love who in that moment you don't see the image of God on their face. You see, they seem like they hate you and you don't really like them either. Then move away. Calm down. It takes about 20 minutes, according to Gottman Research Labs, for all your vitals to come down and for you to get back to that calm space. So I think that's important. I think giving space, of course, we know that when you're talking to a teenager or anyone else who might see aggression in you that isn't even there, and the teenage brain is doing so much rewiring and it has these adult size the first thing that gets transformed are these adult size emotions, but they don't have any of the rational that stuff hasn't come online. So their feelings are very real to them, but they see you being hurtful or negative or why are you yelling at me when you are not yelling at them. So
or threatening, yeah,
yeah,
they
they see
perceive threat.
exactly. So in terms of specific movements that work better for teens, I think it's still you're just in this relationship where you have to be responsible for your own emotions and, dancing, stomping, like, even if your kids roll their eyes, having a, like, one song dance break that you do, you can't make them do it, right? But you just say dance break and you put on a song and you start moving, they roll their eyes, tension is dissipated. Maybe they join you, maybe they don't. But dancing is such a powerful way of resetting.
Mhm. Wonderful. All right, one more question before we go. You are a full-time co-regulator, and you feel like stepping away to move your body will create negative reaction in your spicy one. How do you handle that?
Well, I think it's pretty powerful when you bring in challenges, especially if you have kind of a contentious kid who contrarian who's, like, gonna say the opposite. If you say it's red, "No, it's blue." "Okay." So, playing both the helpless, role, like the discombobulated adult who's like, "I don't even know how to lift this," or, "I don't even know what a wall sit is." "Oh, I'll show you what a wall sit is." So,
Mhm.
it's letting them teach you certain movements can be
Mhm.
helpful with this kinda child, but also giving a challenge, like, "I just heard there's something called the sit to stand ratio, and it can predict how long I'm gonna live." And you just kinda throw it out there as this interesting thing, and then you lay on the ground and you try to get up without using your hands, and now the spicy one's like, "Well, I can do that." So, introducing, like, "I bet you can't," or "I don't know how to," I think help, as well as, like, there's big muscle groups, and I am no, movement expert, so again, I wanna hear about your movement snacks here, but there are big muscle groups that we can engage where no one can even tell we're doing it. And some of this is like good old natured stimming. I mean, as a neurodivergent person, there are ways that I am moving that you can't even tell so I can stay tracking with this conversation. Like maybe I am clenching and unclenching my gluteus maximus, right? And then I'm releasing it. Or maybe you're doing a wall sit and it just looks like you're listening, but really it's taking all your muscles. Or you're like you were talking about hanging on something while being with somebody. How do you see movement snacks also? I've been dying to know what that means.
Well, movement snacks is just this idea where, many people can't step away for a long period of time. And so because they can't go to the gym to do their exercise class or get out for a 45-minute run, they feel like movement is off the table for them. So when you have to do a lot of co-regulation and you're spending you feel we'll just say trapped. You feel trapped in a particular space, just as you're saying, there's a lot of movements that slot right into that time that are fairly easy,
Such as?
well, if you're going to be playing games with your kids, get down in a squat and do it. Sit on the ground in 14 different shapes and fit your yoga class in right there essentially as you do it. Um, I do like games with, uh, kids, like flying airplane, like, I'll lay on my back and you acro yoga
Mm,
with kids is
yes.
another way to get a lot of strength work for yourself, movement, touch, pressure, challenge.
Having everybody, get on all fours and then put their feet up a wall, so everybody is getting in a handstand position, and then
Mhm,
let the dog run through underneath the tunnel is fun too.
exactly. Playful, and physical. So if you're just thinking that exercise has to look like what a lot of grown-ups go off to do for exercise, start looking at it a little look at the environment you're in right now and be like, "How can I fit some movements in?"
Yeah, one thing I like to fit in is every time I brush my teeth or wait in line, I have to alternate standing on one leg, so that I'm totally working on my balance the whole time.
Yeah, like, there's just a lot of ways to stay moving and just stay psychologically flexible. Look for ways to fit in movement that you hadn't thought of before, and then do try to prioritize. I think a lot of you were saying that, there's a point at which you've exhausted your co-regulating muscle. and you need and I think that when people get completely fatigued, they will reach for a way of relaxing that is also sedentary. So maybe finding a way, like when you do have those moments of needing to recoup, the mental focus that it takes to stay regulated, to give yourself some physical way of replenishing. It's really tricky when we are mentally fatigued. It feels the same as when you're physically fatigued. You feel like you just can't move anymore. You're so exhausted. I'm just going to scroll. It's like if you've got 30 minutes to scroll here on social media or um, other whatever else you're doing that kind of gives you an element of calm, but you feel significantly undermoved and you feel like if you moved more, you would metabolize a lot of accumulated chemicals in your body throughout the day to maybe just go, I'm going to go out for an 8-minute walk. I'm going to go out for a 12-minute walk. I'm gonna go pop in a video in my room and do 20 minutes worth of yoga or whatever it is to prioritize even when you feel mentally exhausted, a little bit of physical activity to replenish your energy.
I yeah, remember the moment I heard that maybe at 3 p.m. when it feels like you want a nap, maybe really what you want is a walk. And or that moment when you want a sugar is your body is like, "Give me some movement."
Yeah, that's another movement signal. We interpret it as fatigue and part of our brain's like, "Oh, well, then if I'm fatigued, I need caffeine, I need to sleep." But you might be misinterpreting that signal as you're sluggish. Infuse it with movement and see what happens. Mary, where can people find your book, find more about you and your parenting classes?
You can find my book at maryvangeffen.com, and what's really cool, I don't know when is this gonna air, pretty soon, is I've got all these amazing pre-order bonuses. So, this baby's not gonna be in bookstores till February, but if you order it now, you get an affirmations workshop all about how you can use words to connect and build up the spicy one, as well as, meltdown meditations for moms. You can listen to them after you've not been your best self and kinda get back to, the person you know you want to be, and you get a free audiobook, me reading it to you, so, it's a lot of good stuff if you pre-order.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was lovely to talk to you again.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you.